My brother called at 6:20 a.m. and said, "Mom died last night. She left me the house in trust. You get nothing," his wife added. "You're not even welcome at the funeral." I looked past the phone. Mom was behind me, alive, packing bank statements and a sale agreement into a box. "I'm putting you on speaker." Mom leaned closer. "Jason, before we discuss my funeral, explain why my trust paid your mortgage 3 times." Silence. Then metal scraped in the background. A stranger asked, "Are we changing the locks before the 9 o'clock inspection?" That was when I realized Jason had not invented Mom's death to claim an inheritance. He had invented it to make evidence disappear before breakfast. My name is Laura Bennett, and at 37, I had spent most of my adult life being reminded that my brother lived closer to Mom than I did. I was a nurse manager at a rehabilitation center in Midlothian, Virginia. My work taught me that needing help after surgery was not the same as losing the right to make decisions. 6 months earlier, Mom had undergone a hip replacement. For 2 days, medication left her confused and exhausted. After that, she completed therapy, managed her own appointments, and passed every cognitive screening. Jason still treated those 48 hours like a permanent transfer of authority. He lived 10 minutes from her house in Glen Allen, while I lived 30 minutes away. He used that distance like evidence. "I'm the one who's here," he would say. Mom believed him. She let Jason pay bills, speak with the insurance company, and access one household account while she recovered. He also held a durable power of attorney that allowed him to help with legitimate financial tasks. It did not make him an owner. Mom, Carol Bennett, was 70 and still controlled everything she had built with my late father. Her house was worth about $610,000. Her investment trust held $380,000. She owned a small lake cabin worth roughly $165,000 and kept another $92,000 in cash and long-term care reserves. Altogether, her assets were worth about $1.2 million, but none of it was an inheritance yet. Mom was the grantor, trustee, and primary beneficiary of her revocable trust. Jason and I would split what remained only after her death. Until then, the money existed for her life. I did not want control of it. I wanted her to keep control of it. Jason preferred a different interpretation because he lived nearby, handled a few bills, and expected half someday. He began speaking as if the transfer had already happened. I stayed quiet longer than I should have because part of me felt guilty for leaving home to build a career. Then Mom received a bank letter confirming a $14,000 payment to something called Bennett Home Support LLC. She had never hired that company. Neither had I. It took me 2 minutes to search the business registration. The owner was Jason's wife, Melissa. Mom stared at the registration page for a long time. Then she said, "Do not call your brother yet." The next morning, we met Evelyn Price, the attorney who had created Mom's trust after Dad died. Evelyn brought in Dana Ruiz from the bank's fraud resolution team and Naomi Chen from Tidewater Fiduciary Services for 10 days. We said nothing to Jason. We collected 18 months of statements, invoices, medical records, emails, and trust documents. The first payment Mom had noticed was only the beginning. $42,000 had gone toward Jason's mortgage. $28,500 had been paid to Melissa's company for care coordination and home nursing that never happened. $19,800 bought and repaired a boat. $14,700 paid tuition for Melissa's son. Another $9,400 covered legal fees, a realtor, and preparations to sell Mom's house, travel, restaurants, and unexplained cash withdrawals brought the total to exactly $127,000. The descriptions were carefully chosen: accessible housing, medical transportation, emergency household support. One $14,000 payment claimed Mom had needed temporary accessible housing. She had spent that entire month in her own fully paid-off home. The money had gone directly to Jason's mortgage servicer. The medical records were just as revealing. A doctor had written, "Temporary postoperative confusion likely related to medication." Jason had scanned the note, cropped out the word temporary, and used the rest to claim Mom could no longer manage her affairs. He then signed a successor trustee certification stating that 2 doctors had declared her incapacitated. Neither doctor had. The trust required written notice to Mom and 2 independent medical opinions. Jason had none of them. Then Evelyn found the house sale. Jason and Melissa had agreed to sell Mom's $610,000 home to Red Oak Property Partners for $475,000. The $135,000 discount was almost the exact amount needed to cover what they had taken. In a text to Melissa, Jason wrote, "The house closes before the trust review. Then everything balances." Mom revoked his power of attorney, selected Naomi's company as independent trustee, and moved into my house while we secured the accounts. Her phone stayed off overnight while we copied its data. Jason saw her dark house and assumed she had been moved somewhere without telling him. At 6:20 the next morning, while Mom packed the evidence for our meeting, my phone rang. Jason opened with 4 words. "Mom died last night." The call came while Mom stood behind me, sealing the box of records. "Mom died last night," Jason said. I looked straight at her. He continued before I could respond. "She left me the house and trust. You get nothing. I need your key by 7:30. And don't go to the house. The estate attorney will contact you." Melissa's voice came through beside him. "You're not even welcome at the funeral." I kept my voice level. "What time did she die?" Jason hesitated. "Sometime overnight. Where? At home." Mom raised one eyebrow. "Which doctor confirmed it, Laura? Stop making this difficult. Which lawyer opened the trust? You'll hear from him. Then why do you need my key within an hour?" Something metallic scraped in the background. A man asked. "Do you want the front deadbolt replaced too?" Melissa whispered. "The inspection is at 9, I said. "I'm putting you on speaker." Jason must have thought I wanted a witness to his announcement. Mom set down the bank statements and stepped closer. "Jason, before we discuss my funeral, explain why my trust paid your mortgage 3 times. Nothing came through the phone." Then Melissa said, "Carol, this is a misunderstanding." Mom's voice stayed calm. "What time did I die? And which account paid for it?" Jason finally spoke. "Laura has confused you. You're not capable of understanding what's happening. You just told Laura I was dead. You've been unstable since surgery. I needed help putting on shoes. I did not forget who owned my house." The man in the background asked. "Are we still changing the locks?" Mom leaned toward the phone. "Who is at my house?" Jason disconnected. At 6:31, Evelyn joined our video call. I told her about the locksmith and the 9 o'clock inspection. She moved faster than either of us. She sent fraud alerts to the title company, Red Oak Property Partners, the realtor, the bank, and the locksmith. She attached Mom's revoked power of attorney, current cognitive evaluation, trust documents, and a signed statement confirming Carol Bennett was alive, competent, and had not authorized a sale. Dana restricted outgoing trust transactions. Naomi notified every institution that Jason had never become successor trustee. At 7:05, the locksmith canceled. At 7:40, the title company closed the file. At 9:00, no inspection took place. Trevor Lane from Red Oak called Mom directly. Jason had given him a power of attorney, a false incapacity certification, and a statement claiming I had agreed not to interfere. When Mom said she was not selling, Trevor stopped everything and preserved every email. The first message he forwarded said, "My sister has agreed not to interfere. I had never spoken to him." The next message came from Melissa. "Once the lockbox is installed, the house is effectively ours." That was when we understood the false death announcement was not the scheme. It was only the distraction they needed to finish it. By 10:15 that morning, Mom sent one message to the family group. "I am alive. There is no funeral. Jason has no authority over my house or trust. Do not sign documents, transfer money, or repeat information on his behalf." The calls started immediately. An aunt said Jason must have panicked. A cousin called it a misunderstanding between siblings. Mom ended that argument herself. He did not misunderstand whether I was dead. The next afternoon, Jason and Melissa came to Evelyn's office. Mom sat across from them with 3 folders: mortgage payments, fake care invoices, the house sale. Dana joined by video from the bank. Naomi sat beside Evelyn as the new independent trustee. Jason looked at Mom. I was managing things because you couldn't. Mom placed her cognitive evaluation on the table. I needed help putting on shoes. I did not forget who owned my house. You were confused after surgery. For 2 days. You asked me to handle the money. I asked you to pay bills. I did not ask you to pay your mortgage. Jason said the transfers were reimbursements for the time he had spent helping her. Evelyn opened the ledger. $42,000 to your mortgage servicer is not reimbursement. Jason leaned back. Half of everything was going to be mine eventually. A future inheritance is not a line of credit, Evelyn said. It was going to be mine eventually. Mom looked directly at him. Eventually is not ownership. I placed the purchase agreement beside the independent valuation. You were selling a $610,000 house for $475,000. It was a quick sale price. The discount was $135,000, almost exactly what you needed to replace the money you took. Jason's face tightened. The sale would have made the trust whole, Mom answered. You were not preparing my estate. You were trying to balance your theft with my roof. Then I said what the entire morning had made clear. You did not call to tell me Mom was dead. You called to make me disappear long enough to sell her house. Melissa finally spoke. I only handled paperwork Jason gave me. Evelyn opened the registration for Bennett Home Support LLC, then the invoices, then the realtor emails, then Melissa's message about the lockbox making the house effectively ours. Mom asked, "Who did your company employ to care for me?" Melissa said nothing. There were no nurses, no drivers, no medication logs, no overnight staff. Several invoices charged Mom for transportation on days I had personally taken her to therapy without asking for $1. Mom looked at Melissa. You did not marry into my trust. Dana summarized the losses. $127,000 had been misused. Forensic accounting cost another $8,900. Legal and trust correction added $14,600. Canceling the sale, title work, and inspection added $4,200. The total settlement was $154,700. Jason stared at the figure. I don't have that kind of money. Naomi slid the new trust paperwork toward him. You no longer control any of Carol's accounts. Mom had transferred management to Tidewater Fiduciary Services. I was not replacing Jason as trustee. I wanted Mom protected. Not transferred, I said. Mom looked at Jason. You do not have to give Laura control to take yours away. Evelyn placed the repayment proposal on the table. To avoid an immediate civil claim, Jason and Melissa would have to sell the boat, close Melissa's company, refinance their own house, and repay the rest over 36 months. Jason read the first page twice. Then he looked at me. You have savings. Help me pay this, and I'll repay you instead. I almost laughed, but Mom answered first. No, this time. You are going to use your own house to repay what you took from mine. The settlement required Jason and Melissa to sell the boat first. After the loan and marina fees were cleared, $17,400 went back to Mom's trust. Bennett Home Support LLC was dissolved. Its remaining account balance, equipment, and refundable deposits produced another $12,300. Then they refinanced their own house. $72,000 was paid immediately. The remaining $53,000 would be repaid over 36 months, secured by a lien, if they missed 2 payments. The entire balance became due. Anything still unpaid would also be deducted from whatever Jason might eventually receive from Mom's trust. The agreement did not prevent Mom from cooperating with the bank or any investigation. Jason called that vindictive. Evelyn called it security. He asked me again for a loan. You stole from her future? I said. I am not financing your repayment. Jason lost his power of attorney, successor trustee designation, online access, keys, and permission to contact banks, buyers, or realtors on Mom's behalf. Melissa closed her company, surrendered every invoice, and was barred from presenting herself as Mom's caregiver. Mom changed the locks herself. She did not cut Jason out of her life simply to punish him, but he could no longer enter without permission. Discuss inheritance privately, keep documents, or handle a single financial transaction. Every money-related conversation went through Naomi or Evelyn, Jason said. You're treating me like a criminal, Mom answered. I'm treating you like someone who announced my death to sell my house. Some relatives wanted Mom to forgive him once the first payment arrived. She told them repayment was not an apology, and an apology would not restore authority. I remained Mom's medical power of attorney and emergency contact. Nothing more. Naomi managed the trust through Tidewater Fiduciary Services, which meant removing Jason did not make me the next child in control. That mattered to me. I had spent my career watching families confuse caregiving with ownership. I refused to prove Jason wrong by becoming a softer version of him. One evening, while we packed Mom's files, she apologized. I trusted the child who lived closest and punished the child who asked questions. You don't owe me control, I said. You only owe yourself the right to keep it. 9 months later, Mom decided to sell the Glen Allen house, not because Jason wanted it sold, because the stairs hurt, the yard had become too much work, and she wanted to live closer to her doctors and friends. She hired an independent realtor, ordered a full appraisal, and listed the property openly. The house sold for $623,000. Jason had tried to sell it for $475,000. The difference was $148,000. Mom bought a smaller condo, increased her long-term care reserve, and kept the rest invested for herself. She gave neither of us an early distribution. Jason called Naomi and demanded to know when his share would be released. Naomi reminded him that Mom was alive, the trust was revocable, and he had no current share. Then he texted Mom, "You sold my inheritance." She replied with 3 words. I sold my house, a year after the false death call. Jason made another installment and sent me a message. You got what you wanted. Mom sold the house, and I lost everything. I did not answer. Mom read it over my shoulder. He still thinks the house was something he lost. That was when I realized the settlement had corrected his access. It had not corrected what he believed he was entitled to. Jason asked whether I was satisfied now that the family had fallen apart. The family did not break when Mom checked her bank statements, I said. It broke when you decided her life was an obstacle between you and her property. I only took what would have been mine eventually. There is no inheritance from a woman who is still alive. Mom kept her condo, her trust, her independence, and every boundary Jason had tried to erase. My brother called to announce that our mother was dead. What died that morning was his belief that her life, her house, and her money already belonged to him. Would you have put him on speaker immediately or let him keep talking? Comment and subscribe for more family betrayal and clean financial revenge stories.